So Joe Rogan was in the news a lot recently because President Trump responded to a tweet advocating that Joe Rogan host a presidential debate, and Trump was basically like, I'm down. I'd love for Joe Rogan to host a presidential debate. So, a lot of outlets covered it, and mainstream media really dislikes Rogan, I think for a number of reasons. Remember when Bernie played the video of like the tepid endorsement of him, and then the media did a smear campaign of Joe Rogan? Ever since then, it's just been their gloves off with Rogan and they hate him. Well, this new thing that just happened, which I'm about to show you, I actually think this highlights why the idea of a Rogan moderated debate is actually awesome, and it would be so much better than, traditional mainstream media hosted debates, because I'm not overstating it when I say I think that they're as bad as any human being could possibly be with debates. When you talk about most mainstream outlets, actually, surprisingly, the least bad outlet hosting debates, it's Fox News. And the reason why is the other outlets are afraid of being accused of having a liberal bias, so they ask really stupid questions, and they're trying to avoid the charge of being liberally biased. Fox News gets more leeway because everybody knows they're the right-wing outlet, so sometimes they actually ask real pressing questions. And so they're the least bad of all of them, but they're all bad, honestly. They're all bad. So a Joe Rogan moderated debate would be kind of awesome. Well, now, everybody's hanging on every word that he says because he's got the new Spotify deal, and so he's in the public eye even more. And he made a claim on the podcast with Douglas Murray, and the claim was not true. It was that there's these like left-wing agitators starting the forest fires in the West, whether it's Oregon or, California or wherever. It's like, oh, there are these left-wingers like these Antifa people starting fires. Well, that turns out to be a claim that originally came from these, right-wing extremists who are trying to just pin stuff on the left. And but Rogan repeated the claim, and then there was, people saw that and were like, that's not true. And so this is what happened next. Rogan tweeted, I fucked up on the podcast with Douglas Murray and said that people got arrested lighting fires in Portland. That turns out to not be true. I was very irresponsible not looking into it before I repeated it. I read one story about a guy getting arrested for lighting fires. Turned out to be true, but the other shit I read about people getting arrested for lighting fires in Portland was not true. I repeated it without looking into it, and it was a really fucking stupid mistake that won't happen again. Yeah, so listen, this story alone, I really think it says a lot, because virtually all of the mainstream media outlets helped lie us into the Iraq War. They helped lie us into it. And most of those people who did that dirty work not only are still in media, they're in media and they're some of the highest paid people. So in corporate media, people fail up. The people who do the propaganda for the government, who manufacture consent, those are the people who are viewed as the serious people, and they get promoted. All the people who did the opposite, who called out the war and said, I don't know about this, Phil Donahue. I think he had like the #1 rated show on MSNBC, and he was kicked off. Why? Because he wasn't supporting the war. Jesse Ventura was about to have a show, I believe, on MSNBC, and when they found out he was against the war, they axed him. There was this jingoistic feeling in the country at the time, and they wanted the media to reflect that. They didn't want the media to be critical of power. And so corporate media as an institution is just terrible. And you could say, well, Kyle, that was a long time ago, so maybe they're better now. No, they're not. I mean, look at what they did with Russiagate. you have this president, this Republican president, who's a rich target for critique. They managed to find the one critique of him that's total nonsense, that he's somehow a Manchurian candidate doing the bidding of Russia, even as he escalates with Russia. And people, fake story after fake story after fake story was promoted. And so they're terrible. Mainstream media is terrible at their job. Like, they're objectively bad at doing the thing that they're supposed to do. Now, in comes Joe Rogan. He's not trying to compete with them. He's not. He's a podcaster and a comedian and a cage fighting commentator. This is what he does. And he's open about that, you know? But the fact that on his podcast, he just has conversations with people and talks like a normal person and gives people his opinions, like, that actually makes him a lot better than virtually every opinion commentator in mainstream media. And this shows he has more integrity than they do. They lied us into a war, never apologized for it, and have kept getting promoted. He said something on his show that turned out to not be true, and he immediately comes out and says, wow, turns out that wasn't true. My bad. This is called integrity. That's what this is. So I really do think that this story shows that, yes, you could argue, hey, what credentials does he have to host a presidential debate? I mean, that's a fair point, and he would probably agree with you. He'd be like, yeah, why would I be, this isn't my expertise, this isn't my field. So, yeah, he'd probably agree with you on that. But what's for damn sure is that he would do a much better job than everybody who already moderates all these presidential debates. Because I've seen every single one of them, and they're almost all terrible across the board. Save a handful of examples, they're almost all terrible across the board. And so the people with all the credentials, yes, are the people who are most well-versed in pushing the propaganda. The people who are most well-versed in not challenging the establishment and power. So it turns out a regular dude, your average Joe, no pun intended, would actually probably be a hell of a lot better at it. And so I don't think the idea is crazy at all. And in step all the people who want to, pull up his old tweets or old bits that sounded wrong in one way or another. In step all those people to try to pin that to him and act like you're canceled and you can't be a serious person because of these things you said. And all I would say to these people is, fine, you want to go down that path? Then you absolutely have to also cancel every single person who pushed for the Iraq war, right? To tell an off-color joke is one thing. To help lie the country into a war that killed a minimum 200,000 innocent civilians in Iraq, that's way worse, right? So if you're going to cancel him, you got to cancel all those other people. And even more so, above and beyond how much you cancel Joe. So, listen, he'll admit it. He's a regular guy. He's going to get things wrong from time to time. But at least he has the integrity to correct himself when he feels like he's wrong. And that goes way above and beyond anything you see in corporate media.